Welcome to another episode of Heidi's Lane. So this week, we're going to go ahead and continue what we started talking about last week. Last week was part one of the Control and Letting Go series, where we talk about surrender. What is surrender? I help you identify if you, like I have and still do sometimes, suffer from control freakism. We dove into how it affects our lives. And this week, we're going to talk about what we can actually do about it. If you did not listen to part one, you don't need to listen to part one in order for today's part two to resonate and be something that actually helps you. But if you want to get the most out of it, yes, go listen to part one. So before we get started today, let me just say a couple things. If you're watching this on YouTube, you are not getting a video today. I could not get my camera to work. And sometimes with life, we have to let go of control and surrender to what is. And what is today, as much as my perfectionist brain wanted an episode that had the video and the reels to go with it, I'm choosing to let go. And I'm experiencing surrender, that this episode is going to be exactly what it needs to be. And I'm hoping and praying that there is something better that comes out of it, because there is no video and it's just me talking into a microphone. Who knows? Maybe I do better when I talk into a microphone. We'll have to see. So to get us started today, I'm going to repeat a quote that I shared at the end of last week's episode. It's one of my favorite quotes. Again, if you did not listen, just hear this quote here. This quote is from the book, The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer, which I referenced quite a bit last week. It's a really wonderful book. I highly recommend, if you are a control freak who is struggling to let go of the reins, and you can tell that the more you try to control, the less control you actually have, right? If you're one of those people, then I highly recommend you get that book. I also highly recommend you listen to last week's podcast and this week's. So the quote, Michael Singer says, "My formula for success was very simple. Do whatever is put in front of you with all your heart and soul, without regard for personal results. Do the work as though it were given to you by the universe," I'm going to add in, or God itself, "because it was." I'm going to read that one more time. My formula for success was very simple. Do whatever is put in front of you with all your heart and soul, without regard for personal results. Do the work as though it were given to you by the universe itself or God himself, because it was. So just to kind of piggyback off of what I just said and off of last week, here's the deal, guys. When we try to control the outcome of everything, right? We try to control, like we talked about last week, we try to control how our kids behave, how our spouse handles certain situations, maybe even the parking somewhere, or how the government, we try and control government, all of these things. When we try to control the things that are not inside of our control, what we're saying is that we are God, or we are the universe. We know what's best for us and those around us, and it should be our way or the highway. I want you to think about relationships, right? When maybe it wasn't a perfect fit, or it wasn't a good fit, or it was a terrible fit, right? But because we were so hell-bent on having that person like us or want us, right? Maybe we were chasing unavailable love. I have been there more times than I want to admit, chasing unavailable love. Someone who didn't love me or want me the way that I wanted or loved them. And I would try to control the situation. I would try to not have the relationship fall apart. And the more I try, or I would say, oh my gosh, if this person could only see how great life like with me could be, right? And the more I tried to control, the more out of control I was, the more out of control the situation was. And it truly was me saying to God, hey, I know what's best. I wasn't really praying to God saying, hey, please help this situation be what it needs to be for my highest self. I would pray to God saying, please help this person love me the way that I love them, right? And we can put that same thing, that same idea in so many situations, from career to how we parent. Please help my kids see it the way that I see it. Well, they're not going to see it the way that we see it. They're just not, right? Or please help my boss XYZ, or help this coworker. No, it's just not going to happen that way, right? And the harder we try to control that with which is not something we're meant to control, something that's outside of us, the harder we try to manage the situation, the more out of control we are. The more we try to control, we mentioned this last week, what people say about us, right? I remember, I'm going to go into this, and I don't know if this is too much, but I'm going to say it. I remember how hard it was for Dave to hear the words that some of the haters or bullies, the cyber bullies who have no life. And if you're listening, I mean it, for someone to sit and listen and then to spend their days attacking people that they don't even know, there's no life there. And I have empathy and compassion for the sadness that those people experience on a daily basis, because I'm not there. I would never do that. I couldn't do that. It's just not in my DNA. I think I have too much good in my life to waste my time doing that. But it was really hard for Dave to understand the sadness and the misery that these people experienced. And there was so much harm to his soul when people would speak negatively about him. So much. I mean, more than I think anyone even realized. It really hurt him. And there was a part of him quite often that would read what they would say, and he would try to not be the things they would say about him. So if they made fun of his nostrils, or if they made fun of, they were mean, you guys. No, if they made fun of the way he said something, if they made fun of the way that he was in one of my stories, he would then react to try to control and make them like him. And he would shift how he was to say, oh my gosh, I don't want them to see that part of me that they don't like. Maybe they'll like me it was him trying to control the situation. And for quite a while, that control he was trying to have to make people who do not matter at all, right? They don't matter in his life, didn't matter in his life. But his attempt to try and have them like him, or not hate him, or not make fun of him, him trying to control that situation really had the situation controlling him. Right? Instead of just letting it be what it was. And I think many of us can think through. I mean, I went through a period of my life when I realized they were there. I did the same thing. And then I got to the point where I'm like, what the actual hell am I doing? Why am I letting these people who do not have my cell phone number, why am I letting them tell me who I am? Because they don't know me. They don't know me. And I don't care how many there are. I know that there are far more people out there listening to me right now who actually appreciate who I am, just like I appreciate who they are. So those are my people. I'm not going to listen to a word that anyone else says, and I'm going to let that go, right? I'm going to release it. I'm going to surrender to that situation, right? We talked about last week that, and I think we all can relate to that. We all in our lives, let me just say that, have had haters in some way, shape, or form, whether it's in high school or moms down the street or in our church or whatever it is. There are people who say things about us, maybe something we did that we're not proud of, and that those feathers have been spread in the wind. And we spend time trying to go from person to person to clean up what they're saying about us. And the more we try to control, the more control that situation actually has over us, and the more of our God-given strength and energy that we have that is meant to be spread in this universe towards good, we are wrapping it up in trying to clean up and control. What would happen if we just let go? What would happen if we allowed surrender to be a thing? We talked last week about how surrender is not a thing we do, right? my life coach, Alejandra, had taught me this, and I love her way of saying it. She said, it's, surrender is the result of a particular action. So like when people are like, yeah, I hear about surrender. How do I surrender? We hear about it all the time. Well, surrender is the result of a particular action. And that particular action is letting go. Like this grasp we have, trying to make things be the way that we think that they need to be, right? That picture in our heads of how we believe life is supposed to be. We have that picture and we try and we have such a firm grasp and we're trying to shove everything into that box of the picture of how we think it's supposed to be. And the harder we try, the more control it has over us. So when we choose to let go, then surrender happens. Like that is surrender. That is surrender. So back to what I was saying. I was saying when we try to control the outcome of everything, all those things I talked about, we're saying that we are God, we are the universe, we know what's best for us and we know what's best for those around us. If it should be our way or the highway, right? Even if we wanted that, which I don't think we really do, it's just not possible. It's not possible, you guys. Our job is not to control the flow of the universe. Last week, we talked about how nature is a rhythm, right? And it's a beautiful rhythm and we have nothing to do with it. It just happens and it's so beautiful. Yet we have this idea in our head. Like my mom gave me this card maybe a decade ago. I don't know. I was married to Chris and I was definitely a control freak for sure. I'm less of now, still a control freak. Doing better. But my mom had given me a card for my birthday or something. I don't remember what it was, but it was a card that said something to the tune of, what would you do without me? It's something like, you would die without me. It was a joke to the control freakism that I was experiencing, because I think all of us control freaks have this unrealistic idea in our heads that if we step away, if we let go for 1 second, it's all going to fall apart. Like if we're not there to do everything for our family and our friends and control the situation to make sure our kids do X, Y, Z, or like after high school, right? If I'm not there to control what Maddox is doing or what Marley's doing or fill in the blank, if I'm not there to do it all, micromanage my employees, if they're listening to this, they're laughing at this because it's true. We tend to believe that if we step away, it's all going to fall apart. Well, I am here to tell you it's not, okay? One of the best lessons I had in this was when Dave and I were so busy with the challenges. I'm going to say I was so busy. I'm sure Dave was busy too. He was, but he wasn't as much of a control freak with work as I was. I was very much a control freak. I had a wonderful and large army of people during that phase of my life that helped me achieve those goals. We were doing the challenges and education courses and in-person events. We had Show Up. We were building the app at the time, the Show Up app. Supplements were still growing. It was more work and more to manage than I had ever experienced in my life. And my level of control freakism was on another level. This was from about 2021 to 2020, I mean, honestly, until Dave died. Like, let's be clear, until February 2023. So it was a good year and a half. And it almost 2 years. Maybe, was it longer? No, I don't remember, to be honest. But I remember freaking out all the time and just wanting to do calls in the morning, calls in the afternoon, calls in the evening. I mean, like it was just every day. The calls that I would hold from my team were like 2-hour long calls because I wanted to make sure everyone knew. And sometimes they were 2.5 hours. I wanted to make sure everyone knew exactly what to do for these challenges for our people. And it wasn't just the challenges, but in building things, like I couldn't let team members work without me trying to control how they were working. And we built some really amazing stuff, but it was not sustainable. And there came a point where I realized it actually wasn't until I had to, I'll tell you when it was. When I had my anxiety attacks, clearly behavior like that, controlling too much, will affect your body physiologically. I had my anxiety attacks in August 2022. And that was the first time in over a year when it was the first time that I had, and maybe it was even longer, you guys. Sorry, it must have been a year and a half. But it was the first time because I physiologically could not get out of bed. I was in a dark room for an entire week. And as an employer who was always doing everything and making sure everything was going perfectly in every single way, who truly believed if I stepped away for a day, this would all fall apart. I had to step away for a week. And I was at the point then when I was like, it might fall apart. And I actually don't care right now because I cannot get myself out of bed. I cannot hear a word on the phone without setting myself into another anxiety attack. If it falls apart, it falls apart. And what's interesting is that week of me disappearing from my team created the space for them that they needed to actually thrive. And so then the next week, as I started coming back into things, I stayed somewhat far back. And I think we all learned the absolute greatest lesson that during that period of time. And it was the more tightly wound I am, the more it was like I am a wrench in everyone's spokes. So my job as a leader is to lead and not necessarily do and watch everyone do and tell them how to do, right? And so I have learned that and I've grown much over the last 2 years since that happened. And it was beautiful that I had that experience before Dave passed away, because when that happened, I stepped away for a month and didn't hardly touch anything because I was just taking care of myself and my family. And my team was so wonderful. And I realized that when we step away, whether it's for things medically that we need to step away for, or emergencies, we need to take care of our health, whatever it is, vacation, the world is not going to fall apart. In fact, sometimes when we step away, we give ourselves and everybody else the space they and we need to do better than we could have done when we were so intertwined in trying to control. So back to nature, right? Nature is a rhythm, and our job is not to control the flow of the universe. It's not to control every single thing. Our job is to ride the wave. And I love thinking about it like a wave, because if you watch professional surfers, think about it. You ever go to the beach, you watch those surfers, what are they doing? Those surfers are not trying to control the wave. They're not controlling the wave. They're not trying to control the wave. They are simply there to read the wave and ride, like watch what's happening around them, be aware of their environment. They wait patiently. They allow the ocean to do what the ocean's going to do. And then when they read it properly and they find the right wave or opportunity, then they paddle. They work their butts off to catch that wave, and then they ride the wave. They embrace the flow. So guys, and that is the most beautiful example of riding the wave or surrender, in my opinion. Like I talked about last week, that surrendering, right, or giving up control does not mean giving up. What it means is understanding what you can and cannot control and controlling the things you are meant to. That surfer understands they don't control anything about their environment, nothing. They don't control their environment. They do have control when the right environmental conditions present to paddle like hell and ride a wave. And it becomes this beautiful flow. It's an art. It is truly the art of surrender. So there's another really great quote that I want to read. This is from Michael Singer's Untethered Soul. It's long, so just hear me. But listen to the powerful message that he shares here. He says, to get some distance from this, you first need to get some perspective. Walk outside on a clear night and just look up into the sky. You are sitting on a planet spinning around in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Though you can only see a few thousand stars, there are hundreds of billions of stars in our Milky Way galaxy alone. In fact, it is estimated that there are over 1 trillion stars in the spiral galaxy, and that galaxy would look like one star to us if we could even see it. You're just standing on one little ball of dirt and spinning around one of the stars. Then he goes on to say, from that perspective, do you really care what people think about your clothes or your car? Do you really need to feel embarrassed if you forget someone's name? How can you let those meaningless things cause pain? If you want out, if you want a decent life, you'd better not devote your life to avoiding psychological pain. You'd better not spend your life worrying about whether people like you or whether your car impresses people. He says, what kind of life is that? It is a life of pain. You may not think you feel pain often, but you really do. To spend your life avoiding pain means it's always right behind you. Oof. Do you feel that? Like as I read those words, to spend your life avoiding pain means it's always right behind you. Because that's what it is when we are controlling, is we are simply trying to avoid pain because we don't want to feel it. Are you starting to see what would happen in our lives, though, if we kept that perspective? Like if we kept the perspective, he shares that we are a blip in the universe. And sometimes we don't like to think about it that way, but you guys, it's a reality. We are a blip in the universe. In the grand scheme of things, many of those things that happen in our lives are the tiniest little bumps on a long cosmic road that we are not meant to control. A big part of keeping perspective and finding flow is to just relax. Stop trying to drive, to control, to manipulate, and work everything. Right? Okay, now that I know I have all the feels, that got me a little passionate and emotional. Now that we all have the feels, we have perspective. We got the perspective. I want to make sure that we take everything we learned from what I'm sharing, though, and apply it. So I want to make sure that all of this stuff that you're hearing, okay, here are the things I can do, I said, because this is how knowledge is turned into action. So this stuff comes in layers. The lessons we learn compound on top of each other. And you might finish this episode and think, yeah, okay, Heidi, I got it. And then in 6 months, you might think back and be like, oh my gosh, that's the thing that she really meant. Now I get it. Totally get it now. Right? So just to keep you grounded and help you feel confident that what you're learning here will unfold exactly how it's supposed to for you, I want to send you off today with 3 ideas to remember. So remember, I promised last week we're talking about what it is. Today, we're going to talk about how. If we are control freaks, how can we make this better? How can we have one step in the right direction? Well, I'm going to give you 3 today. So the very first idea, doing these 3 things in terms of ideas. So the very first idea is I want you to remember you are the main character of your own life. If you need to write these ideas down, please do, because they will change you. You are the main character of your own life. We spend way too much time doubting ourselves. I know I do. And I know you listening to this doubt yourself too. It's just a human thing. There's no way around it, right? But remembering that you're the main character of your own life will help. The doubt that we have, why does this happen? So this likely happens because starting at 2 years old, we're told to stay in line. We're told to be quiet. We're told to watch our words. We're told to make sure we don't make anyone around us uncomfortable. We are trained to make people happy. So instead of being who we are, we begin to be who we think we need to be to get love, right? The truth is, though, we don't need to be less of ourselves. We need to be more of ourselves. And the journey on which we're traveling requires that we find and expand the best parts of ourselves, not that we remove all the unpleasant and unsightly parts. So I want you to see this moment right here as a hard reset on your life. You, right now, you have the opportunity to engage with your life in a different way beginning today. Number one, you don't have to watch from the sidelines anymore. You get to choose how you show up for you and for your life. I want you to imagine the movie of your own life. Like just now, the title credits have finished rolling and you fade into view. Everything that has happened in your life up to this point happened before that fade in. And everything that happens after this moment is who you decide to become. The movie of you is about your development into the person you want to become. Right? So now let's just recap that main idea. You are the main character in your own life. No longer is it going to be about what other people want you to do. No longer is it going to be about who you need to be to make them happy. Now, that was all before. Now, it's about what's going to make you the happiest. What's going to create the best life for you? What's going to help you achieve your highest self? Because you are the main character in your own life. All right, the second big idea. The second big idea is you are worthy now. I'm going to say that again. You, listening to this, are worthy now. You don't have to be anything special or unique or different than you already are to be worthy. You are worthy now. I love a quote by Carl Jung. He says, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I chose to become." Oof. I actually think he said, "I am what I choose to become." I might have that quote wrong, but I'm not what happened to me. I'm what I choose to become. We've covered a lot of new ideas in the last 2 episodes, and you probably have a lot of new things you want to do and you want to implement in your life. But don't forget that you don't need to do any of those things in order to be worthy, in order to have love, in order to get self-respect. It doesn't matter what you have or what you haven't done in your past. Your past does not define your value, does not define who you are as a human and as a beautiful soul. Your past doesn't matter. You are always right where you're supposed to be right now. You are a beautiful, divine creature just figuring things out like I am and like everybody else is, and you are worthy of love in this moment. Nothing you add, nothing you remove is going to change that. Do you understand me? And you have to know, I am saying this as much to myself as I am to you. I know this logically, but my ability to believe it isn't always there, right? I have to remind myself, but literally, you go back into your past and change those things you are the most shameful of. I promise you, that wouldn't affect your worthiness. You are worthy of love, not only despite those things, but sometimes because of those things. You've become a much better version of who you are because you've made mistakes. You've learned your lessons. And just you being you is enough. Okay, then the third idea. So that's the second idea is you are worthy now. The third idea, remember this. I want you to write this on a Post-it, maybe have a t-shirt made. We actually had t-shirts made at one point with this on it. The universe has your address. Do not forget it. The universe, also interchangeable with God, has your address. I talked about it earlier. Most of the things that happen in our life are far outside of our control. There was a really great quote. I'm going to have you go listen to the last episode to get it, but it talks about that. Most of the things that happen are so far outside of our control. It is not our job. It's not your job to make the waves. Your job and my job is to ride the waves. It's not to tell other surfers how to ride the waves either, right? It's to ride the waves yourself. Your job is to read the waves, to be aware of what's happening around you, the beautiful synchronicity that nature is, that this world is, that the universe is, that God's creations are. And then you ride the waves as they come, right? Now, you might be listening to me right now and having mixed feelings. Like one hand, you're super optimistic and excited and you're empowered and you're feeling all the feels of this because I am too. And then the other half of you might be like, holy crap, like how am I going to remember this? Now, I know the feeling. Like when I'm inspired, sometimes I have mixed feelings and I'm getting a download of a lot of different things that can help change my life. Like you guys are here. There's mixed feelings and you might be having those now. Like one part of you is super inspired and excited and optimistic, right? Now that you know and you're hearing these things, you're like, I can do something about it. And then the other side of you is like, oh my gosh, how am I going to remember all this? You know, I listen to Heidi's episodes and she gives some great tools, or her guests give great tools, and I'm not going to remember all of them. What am I going to do? Do I need to write them all? Right? We start freaking out. Like I know the feeling of going back into your daily life after being inspired and feeling like you're not able to incorporate or even remember what you're meant to remember. I am a humongous believer that you are going to get from each episode or interaction with me exactly what you are meant to get. This is where trust and faith comes in. And that phrase that I said at the beginning of the third big idea, this matters. And that is, you must trust that the universe has your address. She knows where you live. God has your address. He is there for you. You are going to get out of this what you're meant to get. You have to let go of even that control and let it be. And then one big lesson in this is to stop resisting. When we view everything as a fight, we're going to move through life with a tense and defensive energy, right? So when we're like, oh, I'm just not going to stop fighting. And I want you to think of all the other areas of your life where you are resisting, another form of control. Where are you resisting? Is it in a relationship you're resisting to give the love that you know that that person wants? Is it with your kids? Are you resisting who they are? I love the Carl Jung quote where he says, what we resist persists. Do not forget that. And another quote I love it's Paulo Coelho. I probably messed up how to say his name, but he wrote the book, The Alchemist. I've referenced it before, but he said, when a person really desires something, all the universe conspires to help that person to realize her dream. Such a beautiful quote. And I want you to hear that again. When a person, we're talking about you, really desires something, all of the universe conspires to help that person to realize her dream. But you have to trust that. And you have to know the truth of that. And the more we try to control, that is us getting in the way of the universe and of God, trying to help us make our dreams a reality. Now, I'm telling you, this episode, if you actually take these letting go episodes to heart and you practice those 3 big ideas, you remember them, maybe you get a Post-it, 3 Post-its and you put them on your mirror so you don't forget, life will happen the way it's meant to happen. I still have a long ways to go, you guys. I do. I have a lot of things I need to stop trying to control. I'm really far from perfect at this. And it's increasingly harder. I use that example I said at the beginning is from me trying to control who my kids are and how they are and, what they're going to be after they leave my house is a real struggle for me. And I have to be reminded on a daily basis that everything is going to work out exactly the way it's meant to. And the worst thing for my kids is what I think I experienced as a young adult was a parent who loved me so much that they wanted to control every single thing that I did, right? And that control that was exerted over me in an effort to love me and to make sure I didn't fall. I had someone liken it the other day on a phone call to, they said, you know, the way that sometimes parents are with their kids, because they're trying to control everything. They're helping and they're loving, but their way of helping and loving is like following us into the gym and saying, hey, Heidi, let's build up to a 400-pound bench press. I mean, that's impossible, but let's just say I could bench press. This was a guy telling me this. It's a 400-pound bench press, and having that person be a spotter that lifts half the load, right? Because they're such a control freak. They're so wanting to make sure that we don't get hurt. So they're lifting that load as we're learning, and we're ramping up to a 400-pound bench press. But what we don't realize as a person doing a quote unquote 400-pound bench press is that the spotter's lifting half the load. All we think is, I can lift 400 pounds. So when we go into a gym without the spotter that we have and we attempt to do a 400-pound bench press on our own because we think we can, that barbell crushes us and it hurts. And as a parent, what I'm struggling with now is letting go enough and letting my kids do things on their own and be who they are, not who I want them to be. And watching them struggle and knowing that it's not my job to always pick them up. My job is to be there when they choose to get up and to love them all the way through. My job is not to create the waves for my kids. My job is to be the instructor, telling them how might be best to ride the waves, but seeing and encouraging and supporting and loving them no matter which waves they choose to ride nor how they choose to ride them. Right? My job is to let go and to trust that in my pursuit as a mom, God and the universe has my address. And what I do and how I love is enough, regardless if people say it is or it's not, right? It's to trust that I'm doing how I know I'm supposed to be doing, and that my kids will turn out exactly how they're meant to, and that they are beautiful and they are strong and they are wise and they are confident, and they're going to struggle. They're going to mess up. They're going to have hard days, and it's all going to work out. I didn't get to where I am without struggle. I am who I am, and I am proud of who I am because of the most struggle I have had to endure. And the most beautiful lesson that I've learned in this last year of my life, the most beautiful, is to trust. It's to trust that God has the life in store for me that is best for me. And to know that through letting go and letting things be what they are, not what I want them to be, is how I'll grow the most and experience the most peace. So you guys, my invitation for you this week and for the weeks to come as you go through your week, I want you just to watch out for how the universe will line up to make things happen for you. I want you to prepare to be amazed at how much more peaceful and joyful your life can be when you let go of the need to control the uncontrollable, which, when you think about it, the only things you can control are you, your actions, your perspectives, and most importantly, how you react to situations, people, and experiences that are out of your control. Right? Let me say that again. You can't control the situation. You can't control what they do, but you can control how you react to what they do or what that situation is. So go through this week, watch for those things. Remember the 3 main ideas. Idea number 1 is you are the main character of your own story. Idea number 2 is you are worthy now. And idea 3, the universe and God has your address. I love you guys. I hope you got as much out of this episode, these 2 episodes, as I did creating them for you, and living through all of my control freakism to a state of surrender. Have a wonderful week. I'm going to be back next week with a really great interview with a good friend of mine. I love you guys. Mwah.